Panthers get a 4 out of a possible 8 points in their West Coast trip, as they now have a couple of day offs before they open of homestand at FLA Live Arena. Alex Baumgartner of 5 Reasons Sports is here to join me to discuss the Panthers road trip and upcoming homestand.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, November 7th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MonoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, and the newest show on the Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On NHL Prospects. So, Cats fans, the Florida Panthers just completed a 4-game road trip where they got 4 of a possible 8. You know, when you look back at the play that the Florida Panthers have had the last 2 seasons, this would seem like a disappointment for this Cats team, and maybe still a little bit of it based on season expectations, where these teams are as far as the opposition when you really think about it. But 4 of a possible 8, 500, still very much in control. And when you talk about road points, where the Florida Panthers have really struggled this season, and there was an interesting stat by Alex Lemp of Full Press NHL, where the Florida Panthers haven't had a 2-game winning streak since the first 2 games of the season. So still, the Florida Panthers still trying to figure themselves out in this young season. But let me bring in my guest here on the show. He's a guy who's been here quite a few times now on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. He is Alex Baumgartner of 5 Reasons Sports Network. Alex, welcome back to the show.
It's always a pleasure coming here, no matter if it's 9 a.m. or 3 a.m. We'll do it.
Yep, and luckily we're able to get this an early morning show, even with us in 2 different time zones. As me, I'm podcasting on the road, so if you're on the YouTube and see that the lighting is not the best, I did not bring my studio lights with me, but I did bring the microphone and the equipment with me. But Alex, what's your overall assessment on the road trip? Of course, 3 out of the 4 teams that the Panthers faced off against were starting off the road trip near the bottom of the Western Conference, with 4 out of 8 for this Panthers team.
Yeah, the Arizona game, which started one, is that classic trap game when you start a road trip, specifically when you're going to the West Coast. It's one of those, we should absolutely destroy this team. And then it doesn't happen. Arizona gets their first win in their beautiful college arena, Mullet Arena. I do have to give it to the Coyotes that first game. I thought they were playing the neutral zone trap perfectly. Florida could not enter the zone for the life of them. It looked like Florida wasn't going to get any sustained offense. It came a little bit later in the game just with the sheer amount of shots they got later. These West Coast trips, it seems like the first period, it was a pretty slow start most of the games, just trying to feel out a team you don't see often. I wasn't expecting a 4-0 sweep. We got 4 points. I know you said maybe 5 or 6. I would have expected about, maybe 5, 6. I was expecting a loss in there. You're battling the injuries. The team hasn't looked the same they looked last season. I mean, through 10 games last year, they were undefeated, I think. So, the Panthers are going to be happy that they're going back home. They're going to be happy that they're going to get some guys back in the near future. Aaron Ekblad, I heard he was skating. He was skating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Aaron Ekblad is skating. His LTIR minimum time is almost up. I don't know when they're going to bring him back. This is one of those things where you're going to have to be really careful because Ekblad has been injured quite a bit. You don't want to rush a guy in. And as much as you want him back there, it's still early in the season. So you don't want to put a guy in when he's not ready. But the West Coast trip, there's some things that went well. There's a couple guys that, got the poison out of their snake bite. There's a couple guys that, maybe got banged up a little bit too much, but you got a couple days off now and you're going back home. So 6 out of 10 road trip for the Panthers.
Yeah, and you think about some of the players who started getting it going for the Panthers throughout this road trip. Barkov gets on the power play again throughout this trip. I mean, the game against the LA Kings was still for the Panthers very, very winnable for them. I mean, you got to credit to Jonathan Quick on that power play goal that they had to Victor Arvidsson, like a stretch pass getting it to the neutral zone, and then he didn't get an assist on that one, but just an outstanding pass by Jonathan Quick on that one. And let's just talk about some of the I don't want to call them antics. Antics is the wrong word to use, but some of the on the doorstep play by Matthew Tkachuk on Saturday night against the LA Kings at Crypto.com Arena. Of course, there was a goal taken away from the Panthers right in front of the net, but Jonathan Quick was out of his crease in that one. And then Jameson Olive also showed a graphic just a few weeks ago on a goalie interference against the Lightning that was called into favor of Tampa Bay. And just talk about like the difference between those two and just whether you agree with the call or not. What do you think of that goalie interference, first of all, for Matthew Tkachuk on Jonathan Quick?
Just generally, the NHL is a very weird league when it comes to anything that involves reviewing anything. As we know, the Department of Player Safety, it's kind of like you flip a coin, you're getting one game, you're getting two, or you're getting a fine. There's been a couple suspensions this week that probably should have been more than 2 games, and they got 2 games. I guess we'll talk about suspensions later in the show. In terms of the goalie interference, I don't think that was goalie interference, just because, yes, he was. So a player can't be in the blue crease, in the paint. He can't be in the blue paint. They blow it dead. They move the face off outside. Matthew Tkachuk was a good 4 to 6 inches in front of the blue paint. Jonathan Quick throughout his whole career has been a very aggressive goalie, meaning he plays towards the top of his crease. That's his goalie style. There's no problem with that. There's a reason why he has 2 Stanley Cups. There's a reason why he just passed Carey Price for most wins by an active goaltender, or some stat like that. He kind of moved his head a little bit to kind of peek around the screen. And they said it was incidental contact, but the goaltender made the incidental contact because when the player is playing in his own space, you can't take that space when he's not in the crease. And even though some of Quick's feet were in the crease, some of it wasn't, and the whole front of the body wasn't, Tkachuk wasn't looking at him. When you're moving that way, that shouldn't have been a call. But when they called it on the ice, you can't really overturn that. At the end of the day, I'm not going to lose sleep over one call in one regular season game, especially when goaltender interference is such a weird thing in the NHL. It's almost like pass interference when the Dolphins were playing the Bears.
Yeah.
But the goaltender interference, it's whatever. Like, the goal should have counted. Should have been another power play goal. It's unfortunate because the Panthers challenged it, which was rightfully so, because it should have been a goal. They lose the challenge. They lose the goal. The goal was waved off, but you know what I mean. And then LA scores when the power play is almost expired. It kind of just flipped the script a little bit of the game. And I'm not saying that's why the Panthers lost, because there's a lot of reasons why the Panthers lost that game. But it's a tough one to look at. But also the NHL, everything's kind of up in the air with everything in the league. So, once again, you can't really lose sleep over one call in a regular season game.
Yeah, and luckily for the Panthers, Carter Hagee continued to get it going in this one. Now he's leading the Panthers in goals scored for the team, and Ed Toulouse-Therrien also getting it going. Paul Maurice all consistently talking how he's a top 9 player. So those are a few good things. Ryan Lomberg got on the score sheet as well. Just super aggressive, right? As he was entering on the zone, just nailing a wrister by Jonathan Quick on that one. Interesting stat that I looked up right before recording. Do you know how many times the Florida Panthers have defeated the LA Kings on the road in Staples Center /crypto.com since 2003? Do you know how many times they've defeated the Kings?
Okay, so the NHL started doing the home and home a couple of years ago. I'm going to say they beat them twice.
Correct.
Yeah.
2017 and 2019. Those are the
There
2
you go.
years that the Florida Panthers have defeated the LA Kings on the road. So
The Panthers didn't have very good teams in the early 2000s, so I wasn't really going to give them any there. The Kings still had some pretty decent teams that could compete, so.
Yeah, so makes all the sense in the world why that record is tilted in the way of LA.
Sergei Bobrovsky also has a really low career record against the LA Kings. I was watching the Kings broadcast. I think before the conclusion of the game 2 nights ago, he was like 3-something-8 or 3-8-something. So like a little tough for him. He's played in the East his whole career, but he hasn't had a good time playing against the Kings.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we'll discuss more of this later in the show. We're going to talk about the special teams for the Cats. We're going to talk about a suspension, of course, for Matthew Tkachuk. We're going to discuss that more on this Monday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to talk to you all about SimpliSafe. And if you've thought about securing your home with home security, you've been putting it off. You'll want to listen up. Locked On Panthers listeners can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year. You won't want to miss it. SimpliSafe has earned the name of the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report for a 3rd year in a row. In an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify that the threat is real, so you can get a priority police response. SimpliSafe is a whole home security with advanced sensors for every room, window, and door. HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion that alert you only when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 professional monitoring service costs less than $1 a day, less than half the price of ADT's traditional professionally installed system. The top-rated SimpliSafe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere, arm or disarm, unlock for a guest, access your cameras, or adjust the setting. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I recommend. 50% off any new SimpliSafe system at simplisafe.com/lockedonNHL. That's simplisafe.com/lockedonNHL. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Second segment on this Monday, November 7th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Alex Baumgartner from the 5 Reasons Sports Network here on the show to discuss more about the weekend that was for the Panthers. So going back to that game on Saturday night, one other thing happened for the Panthers is that they were already without Patrick Hornquist after that check to the head by Luke Cunnin on Thursday night against the San Jose Sharks. But with Matthew Tkachuk trying to, have a little hack at it when it comes to trying to deflect the puck into the goal, looks like NHL replay kind of saw his eyes looking towards Quick. As of course, Jonathan Quick's not a guy who will back down of anyone coming into his crease. I mean, he has 2-time Stanley Cup champion for a reason, a very respected goaltender across the league. And I was looking up Matthew Tkachuk's suspension history, and it's been a while. It's been a long time since he's been suspended. It's been since 2017, but this is his 3rd suspension in his career. What do you think of this? What do you think of the suspension? Let's just go right there, then and there.
Yeah, 2 games is a minimum, I think. I was seeing stuff like 10, 15, throw him out of the league. That wasn't going to happen. I think the most I would have thought was 3. I think 2 was the number. 1 to 2, I was expecting that. No more than 3. It was a worthy suspension. He did turn the stick. Now, whether he says, I don't know if he said it was incidental or not. I don't know, but it was pretty clear that a stick made contact with the face of Jonathan Quick, and you can't do that, especially after the whistle, because there's no puck to go play at, so it's a little bit harder to say that's an accident. 2 games is about right from just how the Department of Player Safety works. But it was also kind of weird that Josh Anderson got also 2 games for a completely different incident where Petrangelo's face went into the dasher. So I would like to
near the benches.
Yeah, they're both dangerous plays. I thought Anderson might have got 3 to 4, but they both get 2, and they lose a little bit of money. I think about $100K for Kachuk off his salary.
So we might not see it as a big deal for us, but that's a little bit of an extra blow money for Kachuk that he won't be able to spend on during his off season, as he's learned to really love Florida. But Paul Maurice has had a really tough coaching job really in this last few games with players missing, LTIR. But I mean, the line that a lot of Panther fans have been wanting to see is at least in the beginning of the season, was Colin White going up on that top line, Sam Reinhart being back on the line with Anton Lundell like we saw all of last season, and we saw a little bit of a drought being broken by multiple Sams. Sam Bennett hadn't scored since the beginning of the season, and then Sam Reinhart, who has been just snake bitten by getting goals onto the net. I think now it's like at 30 plus shots for the Panthers, for Sam Reinhart, and he finally gets one in. Of course, puck in front of the net. People are hacking at John Gibson, and then he gets it in. We were talking about earlier about our worries about certain players. We were talking about how we were both not worried about Sasha Barkov. We were more worried about number 13. How do you feel now about Sam Reinhart?
Well, first, the reason why I wasn't too worried about Barkov is just because his game is so multidimensional. I just pulled up a stat while we were in the show, and I just tweeted it. Who leads the league in face-off wins? That's Sasha Barkov with 191 in 13 games. That is 12 more than Bo Horvat has in 12.
Wow.
And if my quick math, that's like 16 more than Patrice Bergeron has in one more game. He's also top 10 in face-off percentage at 56.8%. Barkov is defensively reliable as well for the Panthers. Even if the offense isn't going, he's there. Sam Reinhart's a little bit more of I wouldn't say he's a one-dimensional player, but he doesn't have the defensive abilities, and he doesn't take face-offs very frequently. So when your goal scorer isn't putting the puck in the net, it is a little worrisome, especially when he's getting so many chances. I know our friends over at Panther Pori love the advanced stats. Well, the Panthers have multiple players that are about 3 to 4 goals expected goals under what you're expected. I know Bennett, Kachuk, and Reinhart were all up there. And it's funny when Kachuk leads the team in points, well over a point per game, and he's still almost 4 expected goals under average. The Panthers generate a sheer amount of shots. They hit 50 shots twice this year. They've hit 40, like pretty much half the other games they play, and they're hitting 30
last night.
Yeah, I mean, they get the chances. That's why the expected goals are so high for the Panthers. I think anyone that plays with Anton Lundell looks better. It's just the way that this kid can feed the puck and just open guys up. He is like a miniature version of Barkov, where he's not as strong. His hockey IQ obviously isn't as high as Barkov yet. Barkov is probably one of the 5 smartest guys in the game. But Lundell can do little things where it just opens up the ice. Sam Reinhart looked way more like himself, flipping the puck midair, batting it back to himself. Like, that's the Sam Reinhart that had 82 points last season in 78 games. He just looked way more electric with him, with Lundell, excuse me. And then Sam Bennett also looked very, very noticeable last night as well. And I think A2 Luosterainen is just blossomed into a top 6 winger because he went up to the second line and, he had an amazing feed to Bennett. His defensive abilities are showing. I don't know what they do in Finland, but almost every single Finnish guy is an elite defender as a forward. They really know how to play hockey there. I think Lundell and Reinhart should stay together for a little bit longer. I know Paul Maurice isn't going to break them up yet, but
At least he
you
says.
know, at least he says. You never know with Maurice. He's always having to change stuff on the flies with the injuries. But it's nice to see both of the Sams get it going. And I think going back home, it's going to really help them. And, when the injury table starts looking a little less, the Panthers are going to click a little bit more. So that's why I'm not overly worried with the not slow start, but like not explosive start that you would expect from a team with this offensive firepower.
Yeah, and looking at natural stat trick for that line of Anton Lundell, Sam Reinhart, and Ryan Lomberg from last night. Time on ice at 5-on-5, 9 minutes and 33 seconds together. Corsi 4, 17-7 in favor of that line when they're on the ice as well. So very encouraging sign that's a unit that should stick together. And also, I was while you were talking about Barkov, his face-off percentage is only 0.1 worse than where it was last season. Oh, big difference between Barkov and how he's doing last season. So he's kind of right where we expect Barkov when he's in the faceoff dot. So not a worry about Barkov. And even though they gave up a penalty shot to the Anaheim Ducks while on the power play and ended up being a little closer than the final score indicated, the Panthers, they broke their streak of giving up a power play goal just by a technicality, just by a little bit of a technicality there. But they went 9 straight games with giving up a power play goal. And hey, the Panthers, they got one. And you know what's the great thing about Sunday's game? Brandon Montour, 4 points in that one. Now is in the top 5 in point getters for defensemen. His time on ice has increased by an average of 3+ minutes. Of course, circumstances with Ekblad being out, Mackenzie Weegar being gone, but all the goals for the Panthers on Sunday night, whether they were credits to Montour or not, credit to Verhaeghe on tipping that in, they were created by Montour right on top of the blue paint. They were getting Anaheim a little bit discombobulated and having a hard time for them to set up that they were not helping John Gibson out. So what does Brandon Montour do? Take advantage of them not being set, get the puck through traffic, and even if it bounces off somebody, it's going into the net or someone's there for a rebound. And that is a big credit to Brandon Montour.
The Florida Panthers have very active defensemen offensively. Gustav Forsling is jumping up in the rush a lot more. That confidence is through the roof on him. We saw it the first 2 seasons in Florida with his foot speed, him leading transition. I said he was the fastest guy on the team. Him and Duclair are probably 1 and 2. And if Barkov really gets his feet moving, he's probably up there as well. But Brandon Montour, when they brought him in from Buffalo, the first thing I noticed 2 seasons ago was he was very active in the offensive zone. He was very active trying to join the rush, but there was a little bit of, staying in the zone, staying too low in the zone too much, and then getting caught back in transition, which kind of hurt the Panthers. Now with Brandon Montour, you rarely ever see him giving up odd man rushes because when he leads the rush and he doesn't control the puck, when he is controlling the puck, he gets it off in time. And when he knows it's time to bail, he bails, gets the puck in deep, and then turns back in transition. That's just the maturity of being confident in his ability to jump up in the rush. And you're seeing that with him being so active with the puck on his stick in the offensive zone. There's no other reason why you get 4 points. And he played 30 minutes against San Jose. He's number 2 in ice time in the NHL, just behind Drew Doughty, who is a future Hall of Famer. Brandon Montour told us at training camp he's, fully capable of playing a larger role. Well, he has to do that now. And I don't think the Panthers necessarily have a number one defenseman with Ekblad out. I think they have a one, I guess you would say 1A, 1B, or 1B, 1C, whatever you want to call Montour and Forsling. But those two have exceeded expectations, and I had high expectations on those two entering this season because I saw how they played last year, and I said, well, they're going to get more opportunities. The sky's the limit, and that pair looks really good.
Yeah, and just incredible that Brandon Montour is consistently creating opportunities, and I noticed that too when off the rush because and also his ability to quarterback a power play as well. On that power play, you saw that Montour doesn't necessarily have to possess the puck. He could just go for a quick touch pass to the left-hand side. And when people think it's going to go towards the point, and then he just does a touch pass to the left, that puts a little bit of a freeze on the defense too, especially when they're down a man too. And that's what I think that Brandon Montour has also improved in his game as because let's also not forget that it was very late into training camp when he was as the guy inserted as the guy who was going to be running PP1 for the Panthers. So an encouraging sign for the Panthers, that's for sure. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3. We're going to wrap up the road trip here on Locked On Panthers and talk about the upcoming homestand for the Cats here on this Monday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Third and final segment here on this Monday, November 7th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Alex Baumgartner here from the 5 Reasons Sports Network to chat about the weekend that was for the Panthers. 4 out of 8 points on this road trip. A few days off, a good rest time for the Panthers as they'll have more opportunities for some rest actually coming up because 2 days off right before Carolina, 2 days off right before Edmonton, 2 days off right before Washington. So a lot of time to recover the body. And the way the schedule, Alex, has been working out for the NHL and for the Panthers as well, is they're getting a lot of their West Coast trips out of the way early. This is the first of the 3. There'll be another one later in this month, and then one really in I'm trying to think where's the last one. The last one is around. Last one's around January, early January. So the Panthers are getting it out early. They're not going to be playing in the same time zone. They're going to be playing in the same time zone later in the season. And Randy Moeller actually mentioned on the broadcast about how beneficial that'll be for the Panthers as their body clocks will be more on the East Coast versus West. And for the Cats, 4 out of 8 points, multiple days off. Even though there's a little bit of a scare in the Anaheim game with Ryan Strome getting 2 straight goals in like a 30-second span for the Cats, lapses for the Panthers have been a thing. And the second period, more importantly, as far as goal differential, -5 for the Panthers in the second period. But every shot on goal advantage is dominating in every single period throughout the season. Only their second game of the season against the LA Kings, where they were outshot as far as shot on goals. Only twice this season have they been outshot. So, good. Would you say good position for the Panthers coming into this homestand?
I would say decent position. You still have the injuries. Kachuk's not going to be there for the Carolina game, which is a big loss for them because against Carolina, you're going to want someone like Kachuk just to, generate chances. Carolina's a good hockey team. But the confidence I have in that top 2 pair of Forsling and Montour makes it a little bit better. And then Mahura Gudas has been very solid this year. Reinhart got it going. Bennett got it going. Barkov's got it going. The power play is looking a little bit better. I would say, you get that first West Coast trip out of the way. You're going back home. You get to sleep in your own bed. You're well adjusted to the East Coast time zone again. You get to see the family and everything. That helps the players. And you get to, most importantly, you get to play in front of your home fans. I expect the Panthers to be a little bit more, not a little bit more, a little stronger on this homestand.
Yeah, and it's been for the Panthers. It's been, for the road. It's been not the best record for the Panthers as far as this young season, but home. The only loss that they have at home this season was that game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and as far as goal differential for the Panthers at home, just a +3 on the season. So now it evens out to a 0 for the Panthers as far as goal differential on the season. And of course, we spoke about the guys who got it going. I mean, hey, it's technically not a goal, but hey, Sam Reinhart getting that game winner against the San Jose Sharks. Spoke a little bit about it on Thursday as well. But the Carolina Hurricanes, of course, the Panthers, a rare sweep of the Carolina Hurricanes last season. As far as Aaron and I last week were talking about how different that Panthers team was that in that first matchup against Carolina, they're up by 4 goals and they didn't even have to worry about it the rest of the way. Carolina was thinking, why are we going to exert all our energy into 2 periods when it's an 82-game season? It's not going to be like that this time around. Of course, there's a different change in personnel for the Carolina Hurricanes. Of course, Brent Burns into prior to the season as well for in the NHL. I was thinking that we could very well see a rematch of the 2006 Stanley Cup final between the Edmonton Oilers and Carolina Hurricanes. So this matchup against a possible Stanley Cup favorite in Carolina as far as the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, as you mentioned, last year Florida ran away with those games or some of the games. Florida hasn't been the team this year to just crazily outscore the opponents. A lot of these games have been close, even if they are scoring. The thing that worked for Florida last year is the puck was going in the back of the net, and they were running out like most goals in the 2000s era, I believe. It's just not like that this year. Even though they are getting the chances, a lot of those, shot flurries are coming into the second half of the game. You're going to have to play more of a shutdown game against Carolina because you're just not going to be able to run them out of the building. And especially when you're missing Matthew Tkachuk, who was leading the team in points. I still think he is, unless Verhaeghe overtook him yesterday. It's going to be a little bit more challenging, but you're going to have to play more of a playoff hockey-oriented style, which is what Paul Maurice wanted to implement. And they have been playing closer games, but, the power play will have to click against Carolina because Carolina is a team like Tampa where, you don't want to leave too many open chances out there because they're going to make you pay.
Yeah, and just double checking on points for the Panthers. And Matthew Tkachuk has 4 more points than Carter Verhaeghe, even with that suspension. And Matthew Tkachuk, of course, when you think about his game on Thursday against the San Jose Sharks, 10 shots on goal, that's something that's going to be missing a little bit. And seeing how Anton Lundell has performed with Sam Reinhart, as we spoke about earlier, not being broken up, but what are the chances that Matthew Tkachuk gets inserted back on that top line with Barkov? I would say very high right now because we saw how great they got it going prior to that. Of course, you don't need Matthew Tkachuk to get Barkov going. I think he's a superstar in his own way, and I thought that Rudolph Balcers was the guy who was probably gonna hurt more for Matthew Tkachuk moving up. But I still think that Matthew Tkachuk comes back, he's right on that top line for now. But hey, giving Colin White a little bit of a chance on the top line while Matthew Tkachuk is gone, it gives a little bit of experimentation for Paul Maurice that if you have to split Matthew Tkachuk and Barkov again, you still have a little bit of that sample size on how they played when they were paired.
Absolutely. Matthew Tkachuk, when he went to that first line, everything just started to open up. Carter Verhaeghe is just getting more looks. Barkov was becoming a little bit more active. Um, Sam Reinhart subsequently moved down and down in the lineup, and he's found his place once again next to Anton Lundell. That first line is about as sure as a thing as this team gets right now. Not looking at the Forsling Montour line. When he's back, it's going to be against Edmonton, and
Talk about a
he's
game
going to
to come
be
back
he's
to.
going to be looking forward to that one, the same way he looked forward to that Tampa matchup. So I am willing to put down a very actually, you know what? I'm not even going to say that because you never know what the lines here, but Kachuk should be back in his spot next to Barkov and Verhaeghe.
Should.
I did like Lomberg on that third line, and they had Lomberg with Barkov and Reinhardt for a bit, and Ryan Lomberg is crafty enough to where he can get offense towards the net. I do like him more in that top 9 position than Nick Cousins a little bit. So if I was making the lineups, I would probably have Lomberg wherever Cousins is, if Cousins is higher than him in the lineup. But yeah, Anton Lundell is not really a third line center. He's a second line center. So I can't even call that a third line. I'm very confident in whoever Anton Lundell plays with. Reinhardt's going to do just fine. Keep Kachuk back up there. You slot Colin White where you need to slot Colin White. And A2 can kind of just jump up between those 3 lines if you need a little bit of relief. So I'm not worried about the forward core in terms of who's on which line.
Mm-hmm. And as David Dork has calls it for Etu Lustrine and Etuanon, as far as like get his role and just continuing to just create opportunities. That beautiful, what a beautiful. I could look at that replay on his assist to Sam Bennett like over and over again and just admire his ice vision there and helped got Sam Bennett going as well, like we spoke about earlier. Broke a little bit of a goal drought for him as well. So maybe Bill Zito does like green eggs and ham. So as the Sams have gotten going, but Alex, I want to thank you once again for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Wrapping up the road trip, 2 days off. The Panthers are off from practice today, and I believe they will be back at practice on Tuesday at FLA Live Arena right before their game against the Carolina Hurricanes. Oh, just look at the email. 11 a.m. practice at FLA Live Arena on November 8th. So check. So make sure to follow Alex and I on more updates prior to the game against the Carolina Hurricanes on Wednesday night. So, Alex, let everybody know where they can, not only where they can find you, but some of the work that you'll be doing this weekend for 5 Reasons Sports. Plug yourself all you want right now.
Yeah, A Baumgartner 91 on Twitter, and as Armando just said, this week's going to be a busy one for me as the 2022 Hockey Hall of Fame induction ceremony weekend will be in 4 days in Toronto, Ontario. I will be there. Roberto Luongo will be inducted, and he will be the first majority career Florida Panther to be inducted. There are guys like Pavel Bure in the Hockey Hall of Fame already. However, he did not spend the majority of his career with the Florida Panthers. Roberto Luongo has. He is still with the Panthers in the upper management division. It's going to be a very interesting week. One of the better Hockey Hall of Fame classes with the Sedins, Alfredson, quite a couple nice recent day players. So 5 Reasons Sports, you'll be seeing a lot of articles and a lot of content and a lot of tweets on my Twitter from some of the players with the quotes and whatnot. So stay tuned for that.
Not only stay tuned for that, but we might have to have you back next week here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast to get a full perspective on the in-person ceremony, on how you took it all in, and how, of course, more importantly, how Roberto Luongo took it in, and maybe some of the emotions. So we may be able to laugh, cheer, and cry, how the great Jim Valvano said it back in, I believe, 1994. So maybe we'll be able to have quite a lot of moments, as, like you said, the majority career Florida Panther Roberto Luongo. So it is definitely going to be a special one for all of us, and can't wait to share it all with you guys listening. So, Thank you, Alex, once again, and I hope to have you back on soon. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, and the newest show on the Locked On Podcast Network, Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast for your second listen of the day. And for your next listen, check out Locked On Sports Today podcast. Biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Armando Velez with Alex Baumgartner. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.